I'm Colin Herd, and I'm a convener of the, or co-convener at the moment, of the MLitt in Creative Writing here at the University of Glasgow. And I am joined by two brilliant students on the programme just now, John and Gabby. Hello, John and Gabby.
Hi, how's it going?
So John is on the campus-based program, and Gabby's on the distance learning program. And very soon we're going to be hearing from both John and Gabby about their experiences of the program and what it's like to be a student of creative writing here at the University of Glasgow. But I thought just before we get to that point, I would talk a little bit about the program from my perspective. So I've been here teaching creative writing at the University of Glasgow for 10 years now, and obviously, I am a big fan of the program, but it's I think what makes studying creative writing here at the University of Glasgow unique is a few things. One, it's the student body. We always attract amazing students who consistently produce really incredible works. I'm looking over at the corner of my office there because there are some amazing sort of really ambitious portfolios of writing that have actually been made into objects. So one is this amazing creative bottle. Amazing fire alarm there. Amazing crate of bottles. Obviously, John, if you need to go, you should go. A crate of bottles with messages in them, which was a work of creative writing as messages in bottles that someone did a few years ago on the program. And also this amazing box, kind of briefcase with amazing envelopes and stuff. So the work that people produce on the MLitt is constantly surprising, constantly ambitious, constantly really, really inventive. So the students are the main thing that make the program unique. We're in the really fortunate position of getting a lot of applications on to the program. So we're able to be very selective, and it just means that we just have an amazing student body doing the program each year. So hopefully we'll be welcoming you into that student body as well. The other thing is we try to connect our kind of current students with graduates from the program. So we often have graduates coming back to do talks or as part of the program to share their experience after the program, if they've gone on to publish things, how they've kind of found their way into that direction. And also, if some of them go on to work in the kind of business side of writing as well. So we have graduates who go on to work as agents and that sort of thing, and we invite them back to share their experiences. So really, what we try to do is kind of link up and make it so that if you begin as a student on the creative writing program, you kind of are part of the community going forward as well. And we try to help and support you in your journey as writers beyond the program too. I'm going to give an overview of what the program actually looks like from a more practical perspective. But first, I was just going to ask Gabby and John to share some of their experiences of the program. So Gabby, did you want to talk first of all about how you found studying creative writing as a distance learning student?
Yeah, sure. So something that I was really impressed about going into this course was how well set up it is for remote learners. So I was obviously joining from abroad every day, and I just found it to be incredibly engaging. The facilitation of the classes over Zoom was fantastic for creating this really engaging space for learning and for reading each other's work, getting to know your fellow students. So from both the side of my own writing, I felt that I was really able to develop my own writing over the last year. By interacting with my students and lecturers, getting comments and feedback, all online on my writing, and I've seen the development of my own writing in that way. But I was also really impressed how, even remotely, I was able to be engaged with such a broad range of new books as well and reading lists. So that was fantastic. Just being able to every week kind of log in and talk with people about the books we're reading for class. So the systems that are in place, like the Moodles, like the online forums, but also the Zoom classes, just are really set up to facilitate conversation, learning, and like kind of an expansion of your horizons, which, having worked remotely for about 7 years now, that's obviously not always the case when you're interacting online and coming together online. So definitely engaging is my kind of keyword I would use to describe the online experience.
That's great. Thank you so much, Gabby. And that's really great to hear, because one of the things that I do think makes our distance learning program different to some other distance learning programs is that we really try to make it as close to the campus experience as possible. So that's why we really believe in the live classes, the workshops where it's like being in a classroom with students. So it's not just catching up on recorded classes or anything like that. It's really about those connections, and that's because we really think that as writers, you learn from your peers, you learn from giving feedback to your peers, from reading their work carefully. And I often think that, I don't know if you find this, Gabby, but I often think that the distance learning cohort in some ways is almost like more bonded and more kind of closely knit than sometimes the campus one, because I think they make a kind of extra effort because they're remote. So they kind of, and I know in the past there's often like groups and kind of there's a real community in the background as well as what happens in the sessions themselves.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. We've got a WhatsApp group, obviously, always, and people are also really open to, when we are coming through Glasgow, meeting up, which is lovely. And that's something else to mention as well. I found that, I did come through Glasgow a few months ago, and there's so much open-heartedness to then people coming in, saying hi. I was able to meet my tutor in person. There are events that are happening in person as well, that you're obviously very welcome to join as a remote learning student. So that also really helps, just feeling like you have this base in Glasgow. And then offline or in your spare time, you're obviously also cultivating your base with your classmates as well, who are also remote.
That's great to hear. Thank you so much. So we'll be hearing more from you, of course, in a minute, Gabby. But John, what about you? How did you find it studying here on campus?
Well, as an international student, I think coming to Glasgow was very much a very stark experience for me, getting used to that. But I think quickly you find like a very welcoming and warm community when it comes from both your tutors, your professors, to like your classmates. You'll have some really good conversations, and I can easily remember within my first semester, it was like a kind of a tradition to always get a pint right after, have some conversations about the class. What do you want to go forward? How do you interpret the work? Um, I think similar to what Gabby said about like reading like text together and seeing all these different perspectives, and then kind of, I guess, inheriting those perspectives and molding them to your own whims, maybe. Not quite sure if I'm phrasing that correctly, but putting it all together to create like a new style for yourself has led for me a lot of personal growth and change. And I think if you would ask anyone on campus, you would see similar thought.
That's great. Yeah, thank you so much. And I like that idea of the whims, because that's one of the things that we kind of try to emphasize, is that you're all talented writers. That's why you're on the program. And we don't want to shape you into one specific mold of what we think a writer is. Not that we have one of those, but like, we really want you to follow your own interests, your own enthusiasms, your own obsessions, and what you want to produce. And that we genuinely believe that that's what's going to make the most interesting work. So yeah, so I guess maybe, John, do you have anything more to say about that kind of combination of where, like, how the reading has challenged you? Was the reading that you've done on the program the kind of thing that you would be reading before you joined the program, or has it stretched your reading in interesting directions?
I think so. I think whether it comes from like obviously like the course mandated readings, which then leads to you asking questions if something really interested you. Like I think with your class and with CX1 with you, Colin, I think one that always stuck with me was Orange World, partially because I often like am in that classroom and I see it a lot. But I think like that is a text that I myself would have never read prior, but now having since read that, it has led me to collections of that style and also has made me think about writing short stories in a different way. Um, I also think that like when you do read stuff like that, you are like talking to somebody who obviously writes in a different way to you. And so they'll know either that writer style or writer similar to that style. And then they'll lead you to like a whole new rabbit hole. And then 3 months later, you're obsessed with this whole new genre and you're curious about something that you honestly didn't even know existed a couple months before coming here.
That's great to hear as well. Okay, so I'll actually outline some of those courses that have come up in what Gabby and John have said. So we have sort of three main taught components of the program. I'm going to try and stop having my hands coming up like this. We have three main taught components of the program. So they are the creative writing workshops, which are where you submit your work twice in a semester if you're a full-time student, once in a semester if you're a part-time student, for peer feedback. So there's 12 in a workshop group, 12 students, and you give feedback to your peers, and then, as I say, you submit your work twice in a semester or once in a semester. And it's about 2,500 words, and you I think it's one of the real strengths of the program to have 12 writers who really have no other agenda in reading your work other than to give you honest feedback, and from the perspective of someone who's trying to do the same thing as you. So it's a really unique thing, because at no other point in your writing career do you really have that. You might have trusted peers that you do continue to share your work with, and definitely people from the program often continue to share work with their workshop groups that they've formed on the program, and that happens really regularly. But it's really rare that you actually get feedback that doesn't have an agenda. Later in your careers as writers, you'll get feedback from agents and editors and other people that are have a kind of reason for giving the particular feedback they give. On the program, the only reason is because they want you to be a better writer, just as they themselves want to be a better writer. So it's a really kind of strong part of the program, and I definitely think you learn so much from giving feedback to others, as much as you do from the feedback that you get from your peers as well. So that's a really amazing part of the course, I think. And then there's craft and experimentation 1 and 2, which is the course that John mentioned. And that's where there's a set reading list, and you read texts that are designed to really push you to think about all the possibilities of what your work can be. So quite often those texts are quite experimental, the clue's in the name, and but they're also really highlighting elements of craft as well. So it's just about really, encouraging you to be as ambitious as you possibly can be, and to think about all the different dimensions of your work in terms of structure, voice, tone, perspective, all of those kinds of things, and the actual ultimate form that your work takes. And then we have editing and publication, which is a module that, as the title suggests, is around the kind of more business side of writing, like how to go about finding an agent, how to go about what that process looks like, what the best kind of approach to take to crafting those kind of cover letters for agents is, query letters, and then also a kind of wider sense of all the different ways in which you might get your work out there, because obviously the model of finding an agent and having your work pitched to publishers in that way is one model, and it's a really good model, and it's still absolutely has a lot of traction. But there are lots of other ways in which you might get your writing out there now as well, such as through live performance, or through podcasts, or through online approaches, and also self-publishing. There are lots of valid ways to get your work out there, and we try to cover those and kind of introduce you to different ways to go about that in editing and publication. John, I think there's going to be a link shared to your editing and publication project. Did you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So I did a Substack short series. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to complete it in time. It's based around this project that I decided to title The Orrery, which was going to be obsessed or focused around basically just random topics and their connections to literature. So as of right now, there's only really 2 posts up, and they both relate to nationalism. One in the context of post-colonial Jamaican nationalism and Scottish nationalism, and the dynamics that writers have had with these political movements, and like the identification that people in like the years that have followed, whether it be the modern day or in the 60s, 70s, whatever have you, perceive themselves via the writing. And I thought it was a very fun and interesting experiment that I wish I could have fleshed out more, but unfortunately that wasn't the case. I'd say editing and publication too, overall is a very intense project, and that's not to scare you away at all. It's challenging, but in a way where you learn more about what you can do. Like for me, I primarily write fiction, and so uh, to do basically journalistic writing is something very new to me. But I found that I quite enjoyed it, and I had some pretty good responses from people who have read it. I've heard some very interesting thought pieces, and I think it's something that I will probably continue doing, just as a side hobby, I guess, when it comes to writing.
That's great. Thank you, John. And yes, great, really interesting. And I think that's exactly what the editing and publication project is designed to do. It's designed to encourage you to explore a way of getting your writing out there. So Substack is a really interesting one to explore, and it sounds like a really fascinating project. We've had other really amazing editing and publication projects, such as editing anthologies, editing magazines, putting on literary nights, putting on open mic nights, exhibitions also. So really any kind of mode of transmission of the literary is a valid editing and publication project. So yeah, that's editing and publication. Alongside, Gabby, did you do editing and publication?
So I'm part-time. I still have that to come next year.
Thank you for clarifying. But did you want to talk? I know we're going to share some of your writing as well. And you mentioned just when we were chatting before that came out of the course as well. Did you want to talk about how it kind of came out of the course?
Yeah, so I guess just to talk about one of the other classes, craft and experimentation, that's a class that I found really broadened my horizon. I came into the course focusing mostly on speculative and science fiction writing. And as John and Colin, you've also both mentioned, the craft and experimentation course exposes you to so many different kinds of writing styles, writers, genres. And within the course, there's a lot of variety as well. So you're reading poetry, memoir, short stories across all genres. And that just expanded the way that I view my own writing, because it sort of gives you so many ideas for how you can apply that to your own writing. And I definitely went the more experimental route. I got really inspired by non-literary ways of communicating your story. And that just inspired in me. I started writing stories through receipts and through kind of pieces of advertising. I kind of became obsessed with the idea of found pieces of writing across this fictional sci-fi world that I was building, and using those to create this scene and setting and give more texture to the characters that I was writing. And a part of that is the portfolio that you kind of write at the end of CX1 and CX2. And from one of those portfolio pieces, I basically expanded this world and created this story as part of a writing competition outside of the university, which I ended up winning, which I was really happy about. And it's sort of set in this speculative world. And I will say that the story itself didn't end up as experimental as my portfolio, but it definitely was inspired by that expanded way of thinking. So yeah.
That's great. There are already quite a few questions coming in, so I'm going to turn to those questions, but there are some other courses that I want to outline as well in a short while, which are the sort of optional courses. But we'll get to that. So I'm going to start just rattling through the questions, and John and Gabby, just chip in at any point if you feel like you have something to say about them. So there's a question from Judith, which is, what are you looking for in a candidate? Really, that's a very hard question to answer. We look primarily at the writing portfolio. So we're in the really fortunate position of being able to admit students, select students based on the writing portfolio. So really looking at the qualities of the writing that you exhibit in the writing portfolio, and really, we're not looking. It doesn't need to be super polished. If we thought your writing was already absolutely publishable and everything, we would of course accept you, but that's not exactly what we're looking for. We're looking for a sense of talent. We're looking for a sense of promise, a kind of individual style, but also a sense of that you read, that you're kind of aware of what's out there. Again, it doesn't need to be that you know everything. Otherwise, what's the point in doing the program? It's really about just demonstrating that you kind of would benefit from the program, that you're interested in writing, that you're kind of serious about your writing. So some people, a question that related to the kind of portfolio that we quite often get asked is whether it's best to submit, like a range of stuff. So like poems, fiction, non-fiction, drama, and kind of put all of that into the writing portfolio. The answer is not necessarily. So you can do that. That's totally valid to just kind of do a range of stuff, but it would be equally valid to just submit one kind of one kind of piece that is up to 20 pages, I think, the portfolio. So you can, it can be one piece or it can be a range. And it's really just about showing, your promise as a writer. I would say, unless you're kind of, unless you're serious about all those different kind of genres, don't just put them in for the sake of it. Just try to put your best work in, and that's really what we're looking for. It is sometimes a good idea to do a short kind of note along with it, like a kind of explanatory note of what you're looking to get out to the course, and just include that in the portfolio as almost like a cover letter for the portfolio. That can be really helpful just to read, because it just helps to give context to who you are as a writer and what you want to achieve as a writer. So that would be a little tip that I would suggest. There's a question here about the library and facilities, and it's actually specifically for you, Gabby, which is there a good digital library available to online MLitt students? I can also chime in on this, but did you have a perspective?
Yeah, so I was emailing with the library in my first few weeks because there are ebooks available, of certain titles. So I then ended up super busy with all the course reading, so I didn't end up borrowing any because I bought all of the books already for the course, but there is definitely the option to borrow ebooks.
Yeah, thank you, Gabby. And we're definitely trying to, it's something that we sort of have maybe been a little bit behind on, but we're definitely trying to make sure that all of our reading lists are available as kind of digital texts in the library as well. So yeah, we're hoping that will be the case. So yeah, hopefully that answers that one. The library is amazing. The librarians are amazing, and they're really helpful. There's specific librarians for the subject area, and they're always super helpful and always actually really keen and eager to help. It's their job, and they're passionate about the library's resources, so they're really keen to introduce you to them. There are also inductions for campus. There are definitely library inductions, but there are also online distance learning campus inductions, and so that, and we have in the past done specific creative writing distance learning inductions for the library. So if there's a kind of demand for that, we can definitely do that in the first couple of weeks of the semester too. Okay, there's another question related to reading, which is there any recommended reading to do before the course begins? So I'll answer this, but then John and Gabby, if you have a sense of things that you might have liked to have read before the course begins, feel free to mention them, but if not, no worries too. To be honest, I would just say, just read as widely as you can. The course, there are set texts on the course, but the set texts on the course are, they're dependent on which class you choose. So there's not like any sort of manual or any kind of like one anthology or anything like that it would be really helpful to read. So I would just really recommend reading as widely as you can, and read as widely as you can in the things that interest you, in the kind of writing that you want to do. Or also, if it's not the kind of writing you want to do, if you don't know the sort of kind of writing you want to do, but you just read as widely in kind of the genre, the rough kind of genre. So if you want to write contemporary fiction that you see on prize lists, read what's on the current prize list, see what you think is good, see what you don't think is working so well, read it. And this is the biggest thing. It's not so much what you read, it's the approach you develop to the reading that you do. So reading as a writer, kind of noticing what the decisions the author's making in terms of perspective. So like whenever you read, I'm not trying to take all the joy out of your reading, but think about like how it's put together. Think about the mechanics, like getting kind of under the hood, so to speak, of it. Think about like what's going on, like what the technicalities that are making it work in the way it does. So if it feels very fast paced and very kind of exhilarating to read, think about why that is. Like what is the writer doing that is giving it that? So that's more what I would think about, is not so much set reading that you should do, but start those kind of like processes in your mind of thinking about how it's put together, what is giving it the effect that it's having on you. So yeah, hopefully that's answered that one. But John and Gabby, do you have a sense of anything that you might have liked to have read before the course began?
I do. I found an essay that we read in the early weeks of Craft and Experimentation 1. I found it to be incredibly helpful. It was called The Carrier Bag of Fiction by Ursula Le Guin. And I think for me, as a science fiction, speculative fiction writer and reader, I hadn't read many essays about the craft of writing before this course. And I found that essay gave me the language with which to speak about the books we were then reading in that class. So I definitely would recommend, if you're interested or curious, just having a look at what essays are out there. Obviously, it doesn't have to be that one, but I, if I could do it again, would definitely have read a few of those, as I just found that one so helpful.
Similarly to what Colin said, I would just say read fastly. Like I'm looking out the corner of my eye, and since I've started the course, my reading list has changed so much. Like I'm looking at East of Eden by Steinbeck, Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Bede's The Ecclesiastical History of the English People, Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. I think in part, just keep reading what feels right to you. If you want to read, like Colin said, things that are on like the modern list, and you want to write the next big modern novel, then read those. If you want to write something like in the more older style, then read that kind of stuff. I think honestly, your reading should be both influential to your style, but also always be enjoyable. I think too many times writers will obsess about writing something that will be profitable, but are you writing something that you actually enjoy? I think that's always something you have to remember. Writing is supposed to be enjoyable. It's not torture.
That's great advice. I'm going to rattle through some more because I realize that we've been talking a lot and there's still so many questions to get through. So are seminars and lectures usually in the evening? When will the dates and times be available? So we do always have some evening classes available, but they are particularly for part-time students. So for full-time students, the classes are usually in the daytime. For part-time students, the classes are usually in the evening. And that, by which we mean actually 5 till 7. 5 till 7. Yes, and then full time. There's always a range of options. So for full time, there's a range of timings. So you would be able to, you're not kind of just, there's not only one option ever. And for part-time, they're in the evening. We try to be really accommodating, or we have had situations where it's possible to, if you're a full-time student or if you're a part-time student, go into the full-time group and just do, submit once rather than twice and things like that. But we do tend to find it's best if you're on the track that you're on. So we try to be accommodating. Basically, what I'd say is if you find that there's a problem with the timings, speak to me or speak to Sophie Collins, who also convenes, and try to work something out, because it usually is possible. When will the dates and times be available? So they should all be timetabled now. So in the next month or so, an email should go out to you with those. And that is something that was a bit late last year, and we're trying to make sure that it's more controlled this year. So you should, they should be out within a month or so. And this is kind of connected to the full-time course workload. So there's a question: how much would you say the full-time course workload is? Do many students balance it alongside work? The second part of that is, yes, a lot of students do work and do the course full-time. I don't think it would be possible to work full-time and do the course full-time. I think that would be really demanding and difficult. We do have people who work full-time and do the course part-time. it really depends on you, that side of it. In terms of the workload, so the full-time course load in terms of the contact hours is 6 hours per week. So, and then there's the odd extra thing because you also have one-to-one tutorials. So some weeks you would have a one-to-one tutorial as well. But yeah, that's it, 6 hours per week. And they usually tend to be Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, those classes. There's a question here, is there an exam at the end of the course? No, there's not an exam. So there are assessments for each course at the end of the semester. So there's assessments for the first semester courses, which come in January, and then there's assessments for the second semester courses, which come in April. And then there's the final portfolio of writing, which you work on between April and August, and that comes in at August, and that's the 15,000 word portfolio of writing, like in other subject areas, the dissertation. But yeah, are there lectures? No, there aren't really lectures, to be honest. Most of the teaching is, or all of the teaching really is, in a sense, sort of collaborative, discussion-based, seminar and workshop-based. So there are seminars for the craft and experimentation. Editing and publication is almost the closest to a lecture because it tends to be taught with a big group across the whole program, but it's still not really a lecture. There's lots of input, there's lots of participation, and then the workshops are obviously workshops. When will the course complete and the award be given? So yeah, so the teaching finishes in April. There then are some extra things. So there are like right now we have a reading series in the gardens behind the Lilybank Gardens. There are sometimes guest events and that sort of thing. But the teaching, the kind of formal teaching, ends in April, and then the final portfolio, as I say, comes in August, and then you graduate in December, early December usually, or maybe the end of November, December. So there's a question here. I've already been offered a place. Congratulations. Could you please repeat how often and how much work is shared in the workshops? Yes. So for the workshops, the course that's called Workshop, you submit twice in a semester, and it's 2,500 words, or an equivalent in poetry, which is about 4 poems. And that's for the workshop. But in craft and experimentation, you're also responding week by week to the reading with creative writing. So you'll be writing and sharing work on a weekly basis, but you'll be getting feedback from your tutor in the class and from your peers, maybe a little bit in the class verbally. But the in terms of like detailed feedback in a workshop setting, that's twice in a semester for full time, and it's 2,500 words. What career opportunities do graduates have after completing the course? Our graduates go on to work in all sorts of different careers, and actually often our graduates come to the program already kind of in a career and wanting to pursue writing as their career. So yeah, there's a whole range. Graduates often go on, or sometimes our graduates are already coming from, teaching, journalism, really any career you can think of. It's a really diverse student body we have in terms of ages, in terms of backgrounds, and kind of like where people are coming to the course from. And then people go on often, as I say, people go on to work in the kind of business side of writing, like in publishing, as agents and that sort of thing. But really, marketing is another one that people often go into. And I do think that the skills that you learn as a creative writer are kind of essential in so many different jobs, and often that's not recognized. I think it is recognized as careers, but people don't necessarily think of it. So by which I mean just kind of being exact and precise in the way you write, being kind of very methodical and good at planning long projects. So a creative writing portfolio of 15,000 words, it requires stamina, and it requires kind of planning, and it requires seeing something through. So Gabby and John will be in the process of working on their portfolios right now because they're going to have the summer to do them. And it's a really big task. And it's almost like a project management task. But then you've also got all the inventiveness, the creativity, the doing something different, and the communication skills, obviously, you know, finding a way to communicate something that people will receive in the way you intend, and that people will be either touched by or, like, you know, sprung into action by, or however you want, you know, people to respond. Yeah, really thinking that through. So there's so much, you know, empathy, there's so much inventiveness, creativity. All of that are qualities that creative writing as a discipline develops. So I think it's really useful careers wise. And the university has really great career service opportunities. So definitely get involved with those if you'd like to. And in addition to that, there are lots of extra kind of curricular things outside of the formal program. So, for example, there are student magazines. There's the GUM magazine. There's the Glasgow Guardian, the newspaper. And Glasgow itself as a city has loads of little magazines. There's a zine library here. There's the Glasgow Women's Library. There's amazing small presses like Spam Press. There's amazing literary nights, Water Wings, a lot of which have connections to. So both of those actually are run by either graduates or current people on the in the case of Water Wings, the DFA program. So there's just a really kind of lively literary environment here, which you kind of join in a way by coming onto the program. Crisp Packet Poetry is another night that was set up originally as a EP project, but is now one of the most popular kind of literary nights in Glasgow. So yeah, there's lots of opportunities to kind of build your profile career-wise. Our class is recorded, our online class is recorded, and this is from someone who works Monday to Friday from 8:30 to 5, so having access to recorded lectures would be essential. So the one thing I would say is it would most likely be possible to have classes after 5. Yeah, it would most likely be possible. But that would just be something to check and discuss. I think this year there was actually one of the distance learning workshops was, but if you were studying part-time, we always make sure that there is an evening option available. So you could potentially attend that. In terms of recording classes, it is possible to record. So with the agreement of the groups and the tutor, it is possible to record. But I would actually say that in terms of recorded classes, that's not the way we teach. And so if you're relying totally on recorded classes, you're not going to get the best out of the program. So I would just say that's maybe something to discuss, and feel free to drop me an email, and I'll be happy to arrange a Zoom with you and chat that through a bit more, just so that you kind of are aware of what the program is going to be like before you apply to it. Yeah, so that would be my advice on that. And then the final question for the minute, and then we, do please keep your questions coming, but also we can chat amongst ourselves, is you've said, the question is, I don't have an academic or a creative referee. What can I do? My boss has read my work. Would that be okay? It might be okay. You can submit you can definitely submit that in. It would be good if you could find, so if you haven't done a degree before, we're definitely open to people coming without kind of previous degree. So you are able to apply, and as I say, we do look at your portfolio, and if your portfolio is good enough, then you'll be accepted. So it is possible to come without an academic referee in that sense. I think if you can find some kind of creative referee, if it's possible, that would be advisable. Don't let it put you off, because you can apply with the referee that you've got, and then the worst case scenario is that you if your portfolio was good enough to be accepted, you would then just be asked to provide a creative referee, and then you could maybe speak to me about how you might go about doing that. So so don't let it put you off. Apply, and then if your portfolio is good enough, you'll be accepted, and we'll just chase you up for a referee. Okay. I'm just looking here at other questions. That seems to be all the ones that are kind of live just now. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the optional courses. So in your second year or your second semester, so your second year if you're part-time, your second semester if you're full-time, there's the option to, wait, I think I've got that wrong, haven't I? Yeah, it's in your second semester, whether you're part-time or full-time. You can choose optional courses, which include, they vary kind of year on year, but they include writing the personal, which is a kind of course about writing, as it suggests, the personal kind of personal nonfiction, which has a lot of theory in it. It's really fascinating about the kind of approaches you might take to writing personal material. There's also Poetry Intervenes Now, which is a poetry-specific course. There's Crime Fiction, which my colleague Professor Louise Welsh takes, which is a really popular option. There's Children's Fiction, which is an online course run by in collaboration with Deakin University in Australia, and it's a kind of teaching exchange. And then there are a few others that I don't think are going to run next year, so I'm not going to mention them. But there are optional courses basically. John and Gabby, are there things that you wish you'd known before you arrived on the program? Are there things that in a talk like this you would think it would be really useful for prospective students to know? John?
I think in regards to like the tutoring sessions, I think that's like a very important aspect of the program that when I first had engaged with it, I probably took it a little bit more like loosely than I should have. And I think that's like understanding who your tutor is, what they write, how your writing and their writing both meshes and clashes is like important. And I think you should really look at who's on the staff. I think that's very important. It's something I did multiple times before even considering coming here. But even once you've been accepted, I think that's something you should look at again. And then once time for your tutor to be chosen comes around, I think you should look at that list again. Look at who's within your subject matter or who's outside of your subject matter, maybe, and see what they've written. Not necessarily read their entire portfolio, but try to understand like what they write and why they write, and ask them a few questions. I currently have Dr. Elizabeth Reeder, and she and I have had some really great and in-depth conversations on writing that have honestly changed the way that I've even processed how I'm going to do my final portfolio currently. So I think that's important for your success here.
Thanks, John. I think that's really great advice, and I'm really glad that you've mentioned the tutorials, because I just want to talk a little bit about them as well. So we have, as in addition to the courses that I've outlined, there are these opportunities for one-to-one tutorials with a tutor. And so what that is it's similar to the workshop in the sense that you submit in advance of the tutorial 2,500 words, and your tutor reads it, gives you written feedback, and also talks to you about it in a session which is around 45 minutes to an hour. And I love those sessions. Like when I work with students on those, I think for me, they're those moments where often you talk about the work and you can just almost like see the student understanding what it is they want to do, and often like just through the conversation, you know, like in a way I don't have to do, like I don't feel like I don't have to do that much in those sessions, because you just talk about the work and the cogs start turning, and like a sense of what the possibilities of that work are kind of tend to come out in those discussions. And it sounds like that's what you've been having in those kind of in-depth discussions with your tutor. They're a really wonderful part of the course. So you have 5 tutorials across the program, so spread out across the 1 year or 2 years if you're full-time or part-time. So yeah, great to hear that, John, and great advice. Gabby, was there anything that you wish you'd known?
Yeah, I think for me it would have been, I'd sort of hyper-focused on looking, I attended this call and I started looking into the courses, and I almost sort of didn't realize how much there is outside of that as well that you can get involved with. So there's creative conversations every Monday, which I almost treated as a extra lecture because I'm a keen bean, because it's visiting authors coming through and speaking about their work for about an hour. And there was just so much that I learned from that. And some of these are authors as well that you're then studying in craft and experimentation. So it sort of exposes you to new authors, but it also deepens your understanding of the authors you're already studying. And then beyond that, there's also opportunities for, especially, I did not realize this as a remote student, there's possibilities to attend talks and lectures from outside of the course as well, just things that are going on at the university. So I'm always kind of tuning into that sort of stuff. I went to a really interesting talk in my first semester that was a visiting illustrator from France, and she was talking about her project, her illustration project, and just getting exposed to all those kind of extracurricular opportunities was incredible.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I'm really glad you mentioned Creative Conversations because it's very close to my heart. As Gabby said, it's a visiting speaker program, and it's our kind of flagship creative writing visiting speaker program. In January 2026, it will be going into its 10th year, which I'm just amazed about. And it's so each week on a Monday lunchtime, 1 to 2 p.m., we have a visiting author in conversation with someone from the staff usually, and they talk about their craft. They're really kind of in-depth chats, and also like candid chats. People often share things that you wouldn't like expect. Sometimes we've had people in those sessions say something like, say things like, "Oh, I hope my agent isn't listening, but this." So you really get kind of a sense of what they really think as writers. They often talk about craft. They talk about their approach to writing, and also sometimes those moments of vulnerability or those moments where it was difficult and where they faced challenges, and what their kind of journey to getting published and getting beyond those was like. And we have people talk about, really successful authors sometimes talk about how difficult it was to write the books that they've written, and the kind of moments where the plot didn't seem to be coming together, or where they almost gave up on something and then did, and that sort of thing. So they're really fascinating. We've had some amazing authors, Ian Rankin, Val McDermid, Jamaica Kincaid, and Ngugi wa Thiong'o, really incredible writers for Creative Conversations. And we had a good selection this year as well. And also, Gabby's really right. There are things going on all across the university that you can get involved with when you're here. There is a question in the chat now, which is it difficult to get into creative writing when you are older and have fewer qualifications and you're wanting to switch careers? So on the first part, absolutely not. We have had students of, I was going to say all ages, but I mean all ages post kind of 18 or whatever. We have students. There's no upper limit on there's no kind of upper age limit on you studying. We've had people of all ages, and every year we have people who are probably kind of post-retirement. We have people fresh out of undergraduate. It's really varied, and that's what makes it kind of really rich and diverse, I think. So no, there's no block in terms of older. The question though, I've sort of, that's not exactly what you were asking. The question is it difficult to get into it? I would say no. If you're up for being adventurous, if you're up for trying things out, then there's no reason why it should be. And if you're like wanting to switch career, then creative writing, as I kind of mentioned, builds a lot of skills that might be relevant to whatever that career that you're wanting to switch into. And if that is writing, then it's obviously doing a creative writing program, I think, is a really good way to kickstart you on that journey to getting a manuscript together to submit to agents. A lot of our students, by the time they finish the program, the final portfolio is 15,000, but often people have a lot more of that written, of the manuscript that they're hoping to send out. And then all the other kind of aspects of what you need to send to an agent is covered in editing and publication. So within a year or within 6 months even of finishing the program, you should be, if that's what you want and you've kind of applied yourself to that, you should be in a position to submit your work to agents. And people do, this program is celebrating. This is something I haven't mentioned. I put in my notes to mention, but this program's been running for 30 years. It's going to be 30 years of creative writing at Glasgow in next year. And it's so, it's established for a reason. It has a really great student body for a reason. It's, we get a lot of applications, and it's the reason is that students go on to achieve great things from doing it. So obviously we can't take that much, like it relies on them, and it relies on them doing the work, but it's if you should be in a position to submit your work to agents by the time the program comes to an end. So we have 5 minutes left. If you have more questions, do pop them into the chat, because the time will be up soon. But also do definitely email either myself or Sophie Collins if you have further questions. I might outline, so I think what John mentioned there about the staff body is really useful as well. So I'll just run through some of the expertise that's on the staff body. So I've mentioned her already, but we have the amazing Louise Welsh, amazing novelist, really fated award-winning novelist, who we're really lucky to have as professor, and as I say, runs crime writing. We have, again, an equally successful, brilliant novelist, Carolyn Jess Cook, who's currently the convener of distance learning. So yeah, really, really amazing colleague. The novelist Zoe Strachan, who's also a really amazing colleague, and yeah, as I say, is a novelist, but also works in sound work, so has done a lot of collaborations with sound artists. And that's something that I should say, actually, a lot of us work across different disciplines, and that kind of interdisciplinarity is something that I think the staff body share as a whole. John mentioned her already. Dr. Elizabeth Reeder is a fiction writer and also an essayist, and is really has done a lot of projects around the essay and around the kind of expandable form of the essay, the kind of possibilities of the essay as a creative form. She's really at the forefront of that kind of thinking. Nikki Melville is a brilliant poet. Sophie Collins is a poet and also a fiction writer, and also writes nonfiction. Megan Flaherty is a memoir writer and a really amazing scholar and kind of database, for want of a better word, of nonfiction. That's a real passion of hers, and creative nonfiction is something that she's really amazing on. Jane Goldman is a brilliant poet. Now I'm forgetting who I've mentioned and who I haven't, but I think I've covered everyone. If I have forgotten anyone, you'll forgive me, I'm sure. It looks like we have got some more questions coming in. So how flexible would you say the courses are? As an international student looking at the online course, I'm a little worried about time zones. So yeah, that's a really great question. We do try our best to make sure that you're not taking courses at hours that are really challenging. It's difficult. I can't sit here and say that all the course, everything would be really kind of convenient, and we can't kind of accommodate everyone's time zone. But what I would say is reach out kind of early if you have concerns about that. So as soon as, if you're accepted onto the program, reach out and kind of ask, or even before, if you want, reach out and ask and drop me a line, and I'll see what might be possible. Yeah, we try to not have people doing things at really terrible times, but it has happened, but usually only with people kind of saying that they're okay with it. But yeah, we try to be flexible where possible. How many optional courses do you choose? That's a really great question. So you basically swap out of Craft and Experimentation 2 for one of those optional courses, or you can swap out of Editing and Publication 2 for Children's Literature, or both. So you can swap out of editing and publication 2 to children's literature, and one of the craft and experimentation 2 for one of the optional courses. Anything final from you, John or Gabby?
I would just say that the University of Glasgow is a very unique, interesting experience. As an international student myself, I'd say the way that my time that I've spent in almost a year now is very stark to how my undergraduate was. And I will say that if you do decide to choose this program, I think you'll find a lot in the experience that you get here. No matter what challenges you may face, I think by the time you end, you'll definitely feel more skilled at writing by the end of it. And I think it's really worth the effort. It's really worth the time. And good luck to you guys that get in.
Thanks, John. And Gabby?
Yeah, just echoing what John said. It's been a fantastic experience. And I think from the perspective of someone doing it remotely and part-time, I really do feel like a University of Glasgow student. I don't feel like I'm sort of separated from people who are doing it face-to-face. So I think, yeah, in terms of the course being remote, it's been a fantastic experience that's really enriched the last year of my life.
That's great. Thanks so much. And just as a final word from me, do feel free to reach out. Happy to answer any questions by email, and look forward to hopefully welcoming you onto the program. And thank you all for tuning in and for all your questions.